Hey, this is Skylar Hudson, and you're listening to Tank Talk, presented by KGTropicals.
Thank you, Skylar. Welcome, folks, to another episode of Tank Talk, presented by KGTropicals, Universal Rocks, and DustinsFishTanks.com. I am your host, John Hudson, coming at you every week to help you to bring your love of fish keeping to the next level. We've got a jam-packed episode for you today. The topic of the day today is moving along with what we talked about last week. I told you that I'm starting this series that is common fish keeping blank. And today is mistakes. Common fish keeping mistakes. There are a lot of them. Some of them are fun. Some of them are a little silly. But believe it or not, we have experienced every single one of these. We get people that come into the shop with all different kinds of crazy scenarios, and they ask us about them, and we have to help them through their mistakes. And so I thought it would be fun to talk about these. Now, I've got a list of 10. I don't know if I'm going to get through them all today. We might need to pick up on them next week, and do this as like a 2-part episode, but we'll see. You know how I like to run my mouth. We'll see if we can get through them all today. But, these, like I said, these are common. I mean, we've heard these over and over and over again. And to some of the experienced fish keepers, you may hear these and go, wow, I mean, I wouldn't even imagine somebody would do that. But believe me when I tell you, it happens, and it happens a lot. So I don't have these in any particular order. Like I don't have a number one. This is the number one mistake made. I could have done it that way, but it's not really necessary. So these are not really in any kind of ranking as far as which one's the worst and which one's not, but I do have 10 of them here. And again, I'm just going to say this one more time. Some of these might seem silly, but believe me, these are questions or concerns that people bring me regularly. So the first thing, and this probably could be the number one fish tank mistake, fish keeping mistake. But again, I'm not putting them in order, and that is mixing fish that should not be mixed. Now, this is one of those kind of ongoing debates. I mean, we could go forever talking about this. If you ever followed along with our Q&A series that I did by way of video and the podcast, which we kind of started to get not as much response on that. And so I went ahead and terminated that. And now I've been answering the emails on this podcast, but it's one of the most common things that I get. I mean, it's constant, and it's gotten to the point where it's almost annoying to me. I'm going to be honest with you. And that is people that email me and say, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but is it okay to put red devils with imbunas? I mean, you think I'm crazy, but I promise you it happens all the time. I got one this morning. And I don't recall exactly what it was, but it was a young person asking, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but is it okay to have Oscars and red devils with peacocks? No, it's not okay. I mean, I don't care if the forums tell you that you can do it. It's not okay to do this, folks. I mean, it's just not. Just get that in your head and don't even entertain the idea. Now, can it be done? Yeah, I know a lot of people that have done it. I know a lot of people that have mixed South and Central American cichlids with Africans, or they've mixed South and Central American cichlids with community fish, smaller ones and stuff, and they were always fine and they always got along. But trust me, it's not supposed to be that way. That is somebody that got lucky, and for whatever reason, the fish in their tank are getting along and it works out for them. But you just need to understand that there are fish that they come from different areas of the world. If they were to be pulled out of nature, you've got an Oscar that's pulled out of the Amazon, and then you've got a German red peacock that's pulled out of Lake Malawi in Africa. These are on opposite sides of the world. So obviously they're going to be completely different, not only in their attitude, their size, and everything else, but also the parameters in the water. It's a completely different type of water that is in the Amazon versus what's in Africa. So to keep these fish happy, to keep them thriving, and to keep them giving you the ultimate experience, you need to have their water right. And if you're adjusting the water to one extreme or another just so you can mix these fish together, is foolish, and it's not fair to the fish. So there are people that will tell you that you can do it, and that's fine. I'm just telling you my opinion. Don't. Keep life simpler. If you must have your South American cichlids and you must have your Africans, just get another tank, for crying out loud. Make life easier. And hey, it's always a good excuse to get another tank. That's never a bad thing. So I know I got very animated on that one, but it's because it's so common. People go to the fish stores and they see what they want and they just grab it. And the unfortunate thing is that a lot of pet stores, maybe it's because there's a lack of experience, or maybe the employees there just don't care. They don't stop these people from doing this. And I mean, I guess it's not something that would be considered an arrestable offense or some kind of act of treason or something to do this. So how much can a store owner do? But, it's something that it happens, and it happens a lot. And what ends up happening is people will say, well, the guy at the fish store didn't tell me I can't do that. Okay, well, blame it on the guy at the fish store, whatever. Bottom line, do your research, find out who these fish are compatible with, and set your tank up according to that. Don't just look at that one and it's pretty orange and that one is a pretty white and you want to mix them together, so you're just going to do it. Don't do that. Just read a book, go on a website, watch a video. It's not hard to figure out what fish can go with what, and put them in there, and everybody's life will be that much better. The next one is another one. I mean, a lot of these that we're going to talk about are, you could make a case that these could be the number one. And this one is no different. And that is not having the appropriate size tank for your fish. I don't know how many times I've had people come to my shop and they tell me, yeah, I've got an Oscar in a 20-gallon tank. I know it's not the right size, but I really wanted the fish, and so I went ahead and did that. That is literally cruelty to animals, folks. I mean, you're hurting this animal by doing this. And I know I always use Oscars. Oscars are the best ones to use because they get so big so fast, and they require so much because they get so big so fast. Because they create so much waste, they need a clean tank, and they need a big tank. So Oscars are the perfect fish to use in this kind of a scenario. But it happens all the time. People come in and they all say the same thing. I have my fish in this size tank right now, but I plan on getting a bigger one. And this is where we make our mistakes, folks. We've all done it. Everybody listening to this podcast right now has done that exact scenario that I just laid out, including me. We buy these fish and we put them in a smaller tank. We're planning on getting a bigger tank down the road, and we figure, I'm going to buy them small and I'm just going to grow them up. And, by the time they get to their full size in that particular tank, I will have gotten a new one, and they'll be okay because I can move them into the bigger tank. But we don't do it. That's the problem. Life either gets in the way, or we go on a vacation, or we had some kind of family catastrophe, or you just got busy at work, whatever it is, we don't end up doing it. And this fish ends up sitting in a 20-gallon tank suffering because you decided that it was okay to put them in there just temporarily. It's wrong. And like I said, we've all done it. I put an arowana in a 29-gallon tank when I was 17 years old. What an idiot I was. But I didn't know, and I didn't take the time to do the research that I should have. And to be honest, information was not as readily available as it is now back then. If I had to learn about arowanas, all I really got was what I heard from the people at the pet store. Now, for me, when I bought my first arowana, I didn't even talk to anybody about it. I just saw it. I said, I like that fish. I want it. Give it to me. How much is it? I didn't ask any questions. I didn't do anything. And I put them in a 29-gallon tank. What a shame that was. Now, if I'm being honest with you, I did move them up to a bigger tank very fast. It was like within a month. I put them in a 125-gallon tank, which still isn't big enough. But the fish made it and lived to be about 24 inches for a long time. And then he jumped out of the tank while I was on vacation, and, the same old story. So we've all made that mistake of saying we're going to get them in a bigger tank down the road, and then we never end up doing it. And so my advice when it comes to the appropriate size tank for a fish, do your research. And folks, research is not just watching YouTube videos. I know I have a channel. I know I have a rather large channel that has grown a lot, and a lot of people look to me to get their information. I appreciate that very much. But you can't say, I did my research, when all it was that you did was watch YouTube videos. Come on. I mean, really, when you watch YouTube videos, all you're doing is getting a bunch of opinions from a bunch of dudes just like me. And you may have respect for what I'm doing, and you may consider me an expert, but I'm telling you right now, whenever I give you any information on fish, I'm giving you my experiences. Mine might be different from somebody else. So you don't only want my opinion. You want to get as much information as you can from as many different angles as you can. And the articles are out there. The magazine articles are out there. All different types of things are out there. I'm not going to list them all. There's plenty of research that can be done out there, and you can do it all on your computer, but you just don't want to do it all through that website that is called YouTube. I'm the biggest fan of YouTube in the world. Believe me, I am. But there's more research that can be done than just watching YouTube. I mean, people come in all the time and they consider themselves experts because they've watched all of my videos. It's like, really? I don't even call myself an expert. How does that work? So you got to do more than just watching videos. And it's not hard. If you find a fish that you have to have and you put in that fish, albino socolify, whatever it is, you find that fish, you type that name of that fish in there, and you're going to find within seconds different tank size recommendations for that fish. Or if it's a doveye, or if it's a red devil, it doesn't matter what it is. An arowana. It's not hard to find out what size tank that fish really needs. And if you don't have the money to provide that fish with that size tank, then wait. Wait until you can. One of the things, and I've never really inquired about this. I've never talked to anybody about this. But one of the things that I think doesn't help this argument is the fact that when you go to the fish store, all of these fish are in 20 or 10 gallon tanks. And for some reason that throws us off, and that makes us think that it's okay. But what you're not realizing, or what you should realize, is that they're just temporarily being held in that size tank to sell to you. If I was going to be putting fish in a tank at home, I would not be putting them in a 20 gallon tank because I sell African cichlids. And unless you deal with the little teeny shell dwellers and stuff like that, there's no African cichlid that I would tell you should keep in a 20 gallon tank. But I've got thousands of them in my shop right now that are in 20 gallon tanks. And so I think that that's what throws us off. Us, the consumer, we see that and we're like, well, it's okay because that's how they've got it. But reality, most of the time, my fish are not in that tank longer than a month before they sell to you. And you know what? And a lot of times they grow about 50% in size in that month while they're in those 20 gallon tanks. So don't let that throw you just because your pet store has an arowana in a 55 gallon tank. Don't buy into the fact that you can do that too and it's going to be okay. It's just, like I said, that's the first time I've ever vocalized that opinion before. I've never said it to anybody else or talked to anybody else about it, but I do believe that some of that is true, that we see that and we automatically think that it's okay because they're in a small tank in the fish store. Most of the time, folks, when you go to a pet store, even if it's one of those big box stores that it's just 17-year-old kids that work in there, most of the time, these people are educated enough to know what the fish requires. And a lot of times, particularly the big box stores, you go in there, there's going to be a little sticker underneath the fish that'll tell you right there the minimum tank size that you need to put that fish in. So it's not top secret information. You can find it. It's easily accessible out there to find out what size tank your fish requires. So do the research and make sure you're setting it up right. Treat these animals right, because believe me, when you do, they're going to treat you right in return. All right. This next one is one that I get a lot of, and I've had people that are experienced fish keepers that come to me and they tell me that they've done this and they believe that it's doing the right thing. And I'm telling you right now, it is a mistake, because what you believe is going to happen is not going to happen, and fish are going to die. And that is, it's this scenario. I set up a tank 2 weeks ago, and I did it because I wanted a new tank because I had these fry, or I had something that I needed another tank for. And I wanted to instantly cycle my tank. So what I did was I just did a big water change in my 75 gallon, and I took all of the water from my 75 gallon and I put it into this new tank. And I did that so that it will instantly cycle. And all of a sudden, 4 or 5 days later, all of my fish died. I don't understand why that happened. The tank was cycled because I put water in it from the other tank. The mistake, folks, is that the water does not contain the beneficial bacteria that you think it does. It is not in the water column. The bacteria that grows, that is beneficial to the ecosystem in your aquarium, it grows on the surfaces. It grows in your filters. It grows on the rocks and in the gravel and on the glass. It does not fly around and swim around in the water. And so when you take water from one tank and put it into another, that's doing nothing whatsoever except for taking water that's already contaminated with nitrates and moving it into a brand new tank. It helps nothing. And so that the big myth and the big misunderstanding and the big mistake is that, well, if you take water and put it into a new tank, it's instantly going to cycle it and your fish are safe. That is the wrong statement, that the fish are safe. There's certainly nothing wrong with taking water from one tank and putting it in another, other than the fact that it already contains nitrates and everything else. There's nothing wrong with that. At least the water is going to be a consistent temperature. But there's no benefit to doing that. I've known people that have said, I'm moving. I have a 150-gallon tank. I'm moving 4 hours away. How am I supposed to take 150 gallons of water and transport it from my house in Virginia to my new place in North Carolina? You don't have to. That's the thing. The water doesn't matter. And so people believe that when you're going to move, you have to take all of the water because that's the only way the fish are going to be safe. It's not true. Let the water go. Keep everything else wet if you can. The gravel, the decorations, for God's sakes, your filter. Keep those things wet. If you can keep them submerged, that's beautiful. But keep them wet so that the bacteria that's built up on it doesn't die. And then when you get your tank to the new location, you can put all of those things back into the tank, treat your water with a dechlorinator, put it in there, and boom, your tank has never been better. It's just like it was when you left your house. So that is, I put water from one tank to, that doesn't work, folks. And like I said, I could have included this on last week's episode when I talked about myths in fish keeping, that the bacteria grows in the water. I could have included it in that, but I believe that it's not as much a myth as it is a mistake, because when you do that, when anybody does that, they sit back and they relax because they believe everything's going to be okay. And that is the mistake, because what's going to end up happening is there's no bacteria in the tank. So all of a sudden, there's nothing to fight off that ammonia. The ammonia is going to spike. It's going to kill all the fish in the tank, and you're going to be scratching your head going, wait a minute, I did the right thing. That was the mistake. What you did that you thought was going to be the right thing was the thing that ended up killing all of your fish. So just understand, the water does not contain the beneficial bacteria. It is on the surfaces of your aquarium. So taking water from one tank and putting it into another, even if the first tank is 5 years running and you've never had a fish die in that water, so the water must be safe, it's still going to kill all of the fish in your new tank. It's not the water that's going to kill them. It's going to be what grows in the water that's going to kill them, because you didn't bring any bacteria over from tank A to tank B. So don't do that. Don't make that mistake. I'm having fun with this. This is a good time. Okay, let's move on to the next one. All right, this one is one that is going to make a lot of people laugh. And it's one that I could tell you so many stories about. I could give you examples. I could give you names, but I'm not going to incriminate these people. I could tell you all of the different times that I have had people come to me and tell me that they did this and that it turned out to be a mistake. And that is cleaning your tank too good. Now, what do I mean by that? This goes from one extreme to another. From one extreme, I've had it to where people have just gone in and just stripped the tank of anything and everything in it. They thoroughly vacuum out the gravel, take their gravel out of the aquarium, put it into a 5-gallon bucket, put their garden hose in there and swoosh it around and really scrub that gravel and then throw it back into the tank. They go in with a sponge and they immaculately clean every square inch of the surface area on that glass. And they take all of their decorations, they put them in the bathtub and they take a scrub brush and scrub off all of that gook and nastiness off of their decorations. Put them all back into the tank. They take their filter off, take it to the bathtub and just rinse that thing out like it's at the car wash. And then they put it back in. They put the whole tank back together again. And all of a sudden, everybody starts dying. Why is that? Why does that happen? Because you cleaned the tank too good. Now that is one extreme. The other is the one that's going to make you laugh. It shouldn't make you laugh. It shouldn't make me laugh because it's actually tragic, because it's poisoning your fish and killing everybody. It's a terrible thing. But when you hear it, it's like, how could somebody be that dumb to do that? I have literally had people come into my shop and say, all of my fish died. I need to get new fish. And I'm like, oh no, what happened? And they say, well, it was my dad's fault. He poured bleach in the tank. I'm going to let you process that for a second. Yes, I have had on more than one occasion, and it's always dads. It's always dads thinking they're knowing what they're doing and trying to help out their little daughter who's so precious and they want to see her smile. And so they go in to try to clean the tank for them and literally put bleach in the water, because the bleach is going to help to make it easier to clean the tank. And I'm talking, they put bleach in it with the fish still in there. I'm not kidding you here, folks. It happens. And I've heard it more than once. I don't know what people are thinking when they do something like this, but it happens. And that is an extreme that I feel like I don't really need to spend a whole lot of time on, because that scenario is so far out there that I don't feel like a lot of time needs to be spent on it. I mean, just because common sense will tell you that you don't put bleach in the water at all. You don't bring bleach anywhere near your aquarium. And for God's sakes, you don't put it in the water while your fish are still in there. You wouldn't fill your bathtub up with bleach and put your 4-year-old in there, would you? No. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing that anybody could ever do. And so I'm not going to spend any more time on it. That is an extreme that is at a whole new level. But cleaning the tank too good, even not using these types of things. A lot of people, their tank will get really nasty and maybe a fish or two will die. And they're like, oh, I got to stop this from happening. So I'm going to invest my Saturday and I'm going to do the right thing. And I'm really going to go after cleaning this tank. Top to bottom, I'm going to get this thing immaculate. And what ends up happening is they do this and they put their tank back together and it looks beautiful. It's gorgeous because everything is sparkling and everything's new, and they don't realize the harm that they've caused. And they don't realize it until 4 or 5 days later when that ammonia hits and all of the fish start gasping for air at the top and they all start dying. That is when this goes from bad to worse. They felt like they were doing the right thing, but what they ended up doing was killing all of their fish. So I'm going to give you a little bit of advice if you run into a scenario like this where things are happening and they're just falling apart and you don't know what's going on and you want to really go after it and clean it real good. I'm going to tell you how to do that. But this is something that happens a lot, folks. And usually it's because people don't understand the concept of beneficial bacteria in an aquarium. They don't understand what goes on in the aquarium. They believe that all the filter does is pick up the poop and leftover food and traps it in those sponges, and that's all that it does. I mean, and the water, when the water evaporates, you just put more water in and everybody's okay and everything's fine. The water's clean, so it's good. the water looks good, so it must be healthy for the fish. They don't understand really what's going on, all of the life that is in that aquarium. And they don't realize that when they pull out their sponge and when they throw things in the bathtub and they rinse it under the sink, they don't understand that you're causing more harm than good. Now, the easiest way to advise you to avoid this kind of a problem is to understand chlorine. I know that sounds funny, and there's some people right now that are saying, well, I have a well, so that doesn't matter. But just hear me out here. Understand what chlorine does. Also understand that your aquarium has bacteria in there, bacteria of the good variety that your fish need to maintain a healthy aquarium. So you've got chlorine in your water. You've got bacteria that you need in the tank to keep everybody healthy. What is the purpose of chlorine? Why does your water treatment facility charge you money every month to put chlorine in the water? Why do they do that? Chlorine kills bacteria. So when you put your rocks or your plants or your gravel, when you put it under the sink and you're rinsing it with your water that's from the water treatment facility, what are you doing? You're basically treating it with an antibacterial water because your water has chlorine in it. And the purpose of chlorine is to kill bacteria. So the chlorine is going to do its job and it's going to eliminate all of the bacteria from the rocks or the gravel or the plants. So that when you put it on there, all of that life, when you put it back in the aquarium, all of that life that had grown and established itself and was benefiting the ecosystem in your aquarium, it's all now dead because you neutralized it by cleaning it with chlorine. You thought, I was just cleaning it with clean water. That's all. It was just water from the sink. The water has to be safe. I drink it. I make my coffee with it. But what you're not understanding is that it's the chlorine that's in that water that is going to kill off all of that bacteria. So it's almost like bathing yourself in antibacterial soap. That's what's happening there when you do that. So this is why one of the main purposes of water conditioners, folks, when you put fresh water from your tap in your aquarium, it's not the water that kills your fish. Water with chlorine in it, unless it was like, poisonous levels of chlorine. It's not the chlorine in the water that kills your fish. It's healthy for the fish. What happens when you don't put water conditioners in your water after you've done a water change? It's the chlorine that is in your fresh water that attacks and kills and neutralizes the beneficial bacteria that's in your aquarium. And so you'll end up, the bacteria can't keep up with the cycle of the tank. And so ammonia will spike, nitrites will spike, and end up killing all of the fish in the tank. So when you put fresh water in the tank, it's not the water that kills the fish. It's the chlorine that kills the bacteria that eventually kills the fish. I hope that makes sense. So that's why I said to understand how you could clean an aquarium too much, you need to understand what chlorine is and what chlorine does. So how do you avoid this? It's very simple. It's more simple than you can imagine. There's a couple of different ways. One, you can scrub your rock or your gravel or whatever in the tank. Yeah, it'll make it a little brown and a little unsightly for a little while, but eventually your filter will pick all that up and everything will be fine. Give it a couple hours, it'll clear up. I don't necessarily recommend doing it that way, but the other way would be to take a siphon tube. We all have one because we have an aquarium. Take a siphon tube and siphon water from your aquarium that has been treated with water conditioners, that has had the chlorine removed, and you put that into a 5-gallon bucket. Now you have 5 gallons of water that can be used to clean your aquarium decorations or to rinse out your sponges from your filter or whatever it is. Now you're using a water source that does not have that bacteria-killing chlorine in it. And so you take it out, you take your rock out that's gotten all green and brown and nasty, and it used to be white, and you want to pretty it up again. You take that out, you put it down in your 5-gallon bucket that is full of water from your aquarium that has no chlorine in it, and you scrub it off in there. And yes, it's going to make the water really dirty, but so what? You're not killing anything. It's water that is no chlorine. It's not going to kill the bacteria. And yes, you are going to remove a little bit of the bacteria when you scrub it. But however, the bacteria is microscopic, folks. You can't see it. You're not going to remove all of it. You're going to still leave quite a bit on there. You're not going to scrub hard enough to get it all off. Really, all you're trying to do is get the brown or the green algae off of there, and everybody's happy. So you go in there, you lightly scrub it off, clean it up real good, put it back in. You have not killed the bacteria that is on the surfaces of that rock or that plant or whatever. Your sponges in your filters will be the same way. A lot of people want to really aggressively clean these sponges. And when I say sponges, I'm not talking about the blue sponge pad that's on the back of a filter cartridge, like for a Marine Land or for a Tetra filter or something like that. I'm talking about large sponges like what you would find in your canister filters or in like an AquaClear filter that has the nice big thick sponge. If you want to clean those off, do it the exact same way I just told you. Water from the tank into a 5-gallon bucket. You take your sponge, you put it down in the water, you squeeze it a few times, and that's it. You let the water drain off of it, put it right back in your tank, and you're done. Don't go overboard with cleaning those sponges off. Sponges are one of the best places for the growth of beneficial bacteria. So that is how you want to avoid this problem. If you take your decorations and you put them into the bathtub and you run bathtub water over top of it, or you fill your bathtub full of fresh water, then all you're doing is neutralizing all of that bacteria, and you're making things worse. Even though the tank is going to look better in the beginning, it's still going to end up being disastrous in the end. So do yourself a favor and don't clean your tank too thoroughly, and for God's sakes, don't put bleach in the water. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do one more on this episode, and then we're going to cut it off and pick this back up again next week after Christmas when we're all getting ready for our big New Year's bash. My New Year's bash is going to be sitting at home and probably going to bed before midnight. But anyway, this last one is something that I get quite a bit. And it again is something where people believe they're doing the right thing, but in actuality, they're creating more harm than good. I get a lot of people that come in and say, I live a busy lifestyle. I got a bunch of kids and I got this and I got that and I got a busy job. And so I don't have time to do things the way that I know that they should be done. And so I don't get in there with my siphon tube and vacuum out the gravel and, get all of that waste and stuff out of there. What I do is I go to my tank and I have a 1-gallon pitcher and I just take the lid off and I just scoop up a gallon at a time and I walk them to my sink and I dump it out. And then once I've taken 5 or 6 pitchers of water out of the aquarium, then I take and I turn the sink on and I fill the same pitcher up and I bring it back and I just refill it. And that is how I do my water changes. Now, when you do that, you are indeed doing a water change. Yes, it is true. And yes, it is going to benefit the fish and it's going to be a good thing, but it's going to be very temporary. The main reason why you are doing a water change is to remove the waste and the leftover food from the aquarium, because it is that leftover food and that waste that is creating the toxins in the water that is going to kill your fish. And so when you do a water change by just dunking a bucket into the water and dumping it out into your sink, you're not really accomplishing a whole lot, because what's going to end up happening is you put fresh water back in there and it's going to mix in with water that is heavily contaminated, because all of that waste and all of that food is still down at the bottom of the tank. And so when that water cycles in with the existing water, it's going to contaminate the whole thing very fast. And so, yeah, you're doing a water change and it makes you feel good because you feel like you're doing your part. But in all actuality, you're not. You're basically wasting your time, because it's going to help the fish for maybe a few hours and then it's all going to turn to poop again. Literally, it's going to turn to poop again. That's what the water is. These fish swim around in their own toilets, folks. So when you do that, you're not flushing the toilet. All you're doing is throwing in a little bit more water into the toilet. You're not relieving anything. So don't be lazy. If you're a lazy person that doesn't have enough time, or if you're lazy, or if you're the kind of person that doesn't have enough time, which I don't believe. I mean, I've got 5 kids, 2 jobs. I take care of 220 tanks, and I vacuum the gravel in every single one of them. So I don't believe you when you tell me that you don't have enough time. But if you're somebody who's lazy or you don't have the time to do it, then just don't buy an aquarium at all. I mean, just because all you're going to do is kill fish, and that's not cool. So do your gravel vacs every single time you do a water change. Now, if you're somebody who is religious, and I don't mean in a godly way, I mean you religiously take care of your aquariums, you do it twice a week, or even you do a large water change once a week, and you know, you're absolutely methodical about your maintenance, that kind of a person can probably get away with vacuuming their gravel every other time. If you have a tank with 75 African cichlids in it, no, you're never going to skip a gravel vac. Or if you have a tank that has 2 Oscars in it, 2 Oscars poop about the same amount as 75 African cichlids. So you definitely want to clean the gravel every single time with those kind of fish. But if you're somebody who has a community tank that has plants in it, and you know, the plants kind of help to take care of the nitrates and all of that kind of stuff, then you can get away with skipping the gravel vac every other time. But get into the habit. Just make it what you do. It's part of the deal. When you do your maintenance, you remove the waste and the uneaten food from the gravel. It's just part of the deal. And when you buy your first tank, know that you're going to have to do that. So it's not a surprise to you, and you don't go, oh man, every time you have to do some maintenance. It's part of the deal. You have to do it every single time because, again, I know it's gross, but I'm saying it. All of these fish are swimming around in a sewer, and it's not fair to keep that in there while they're swimming around in their own poop. And oh God, it's just don't do it. It's not fair to the fish. Be a good person. Take care of these animals. Vacuum the gravel every single time you do a water change. So that is it for this episode. This was a lot of fun. It's another one of those episodes where I'm sitting here swinging my hands around and just having a good old time with this. If anybody was watching in, they would probably think I was nuts. I really should video these from time to time and put it up on YouTube so you can see how crazy I get when I'm sitting here talking, because I go crazy. But it's because I have fun with this. It's like I'm talking to my friends, and I enjoy it so much talking to you all about these things. And so I get animated, and it's a good time. But we are going to pick this up again next week, and we're going to go through 5 more of the common mistakes made by fish keepers. And, I'm going to say it one more time, folks. Every single thing that I have told you in this episode and in next week's episode have happened. And they've happened more than once. Even the one with Dad putting bleach in the water. These things happen. And so it's definitely worthy of really getting into detail and really talking about these mistakes. And I think it would be better off to go ahead and separate it into 2 episodes rather than try to cram it all in to one. So this episode may turn out to be a little shorter than what you're used to from us, but that's okay, because we're going to be thorough and make sure that we're covering everything the right way. So got some exciting stuff happening over the next couple of weeks with moving the shop over to the house, and also we may have a new sponsor signing up here real soon. So I'm excited about that, but all different kinds of stuff going on. But one thing I can promise you is that there will be a new podcast episode every single week. Hopefully next week is not the same problem that I had this week with having to do it on Wednesday rather than Tuesday. I don't know. I'm going to get you an episode every single week, though, I promise. Thank you so much for listening today. I have certainly had a good time with this episode. And if you have too, then don't forget to come back next week. And also don't forget to support our sponsors, KGTropicals.com, UniversalRocks.com, DustinsFishTanks.com. Support these folks so that we can continue to bring you new episodes every single week. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again next week.